Imagine yourself under a starry sky, around the warm glow of a sacred fire, where speakers gather to share their wisdom and insights. Creating a sacred space where all are welcome to warm their hands. Here are your hosts, Sarenth Odinson, Snow, Cabra, and Emily Streaking Fate. Discuss spirituality, mythology, animism, and culture around a virtual sacred fire. Won't you join us around Grandfather Fire?
Hail to our gods of hospitality, of plenty, of the stores laid up, so all may prosper, so all may live. Hail to our gods of fermentation and care, of canning, of drying, of preserving. Hail to our gods who show us how to feed and care, to those who show us how to bind and knit, how to clothe and feed, how to make the water pure, how to make things good. Hail to our gods of hospitality, of open doors, of open pantries. Please help us. Please help us to make good ways between ourselves. Help us to treat our neighbors well and be treated with kindness in turn. Please teach us reciprocity, compassion, and boundaries. Please teach us to do good work with our hands, that our hearts, in turn, may do good work, that our minds may be turned to good work, so that as people and communities, we can live that ethic of hospitality, that virtue, that beauty, and live rightly and well with you as well. Hail to you all. Welcome to another episode of Around Grandfather Fire. This is episode 148 with my good friend and co-host Emily Streaking Fate. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing fairly well. It is a week after convocation, and I would say I am mostly recovered. I felt really good a day or two after, and so I was like, oh, this is great. And then I think the needing to compensate and recovery started kicking in. How about you, Sarenth?
Yeah, con crash is a thing. I think that compared to previous years, this year was a lot more gentle on me. This was probably one of the best convocations I've ever been to. It was both very communally minded and very well attended, to be perfectly blunt about it. And so convocation is one of those things where I always clear my schedule for it, just because it's that time of year where so much of the community comes together. And I've been going to this for, let's see, 2006 was 19 years ago. So been going to it for a hot minute. And it's exciting to see it go out of the tarot. When I started, I think it was the devil or death when I started going, and then it transitioned into the Kabbalah, and now it's transitioned out of the Kabbalah, and it's taking up alchemy as its theme. But we'll see if that theme lasts into next year. Maybe the next Magical Education Council will keep that as its theme, or maybe they'll go with something else. But the current MEC board has a lot to be proud of, especially given what a rough patch we went through with the old hotel. Just as a little bit of background information for those who don't know, in what, 3 years ago now, There was a great big winter storm that blew through Michigan, shut down our airports, and kind of put everything to a standstill. And what we didn't realize was that Convocation's hotel was an overflow point for the local
For the
for
airports.
the airports. So not only did a lot of people not get their rooms, but also it was like maybe 2 or 3 in the morning before some people actually got to bed. On top of that, just after opening ritual, a part of the hotel caught fire and we had to evacuate the whole damn thing. So the current council, as it sits, has had a lot of challenges thrown their way and has done a lot of work. So kudos to them and hurrah for them, because that's a lot for your first year coming fresh off the track.
Yeah, that was my first convocation. This is my third year attending, and they've been in their current hotel for the last 2 years. I am very grateful because it's so close to the house that it makes the getting there initially really easy. And we know all the best local spots if we want to go out for food. Um, I think this year as well has been the smoothest for the two of us as far as convocation goes. Um, it it is miles and miles of difference from the first convocation that I attended with you, Sarah. As far as like the first convocation, I basically spent following Sarenth around, funneling energy and healing to him while he did all the work for the community that was needed. Carrying his things and his additional battery pack, so to speak. This convocation was a lot more balanced overall. Um, I got to run my ancestor ritual with Sarenth's help, and that was fantastic. I have done a similar ritual once before, but it was for an online event. So this was my first time doing it in person. It was very fun and very exciting. And I look forward to potentially running future rituals at Convo.
Yeah. I like I said, I had an excellent weekend. The folks that came to the Talking with Trolls, I was very happy to see how many people came. They put me in a 10:30 p.m. time slot, which usually means you're going to get 1 or 2 people that show up because it's so late at night and it's the first day. I actually got 10, so I was pretty happy with that. And especially for something that can be really heavy, working with spirits during a workshop, I cannot complain about the people that showed. Everybody was very kind to one another and everybody was very attentive to each other's needs. The other workshop that I put on, which was Heathen Mouth Magic, was very well attended, and I had a blast doing it. Can't wait to do more workshops next year. Um, like I said, Convocation is one of those things I look forward to every year. It's kind of like Ann Arbor Pagan Pride in that I put aside that time to have community time, and it's a time to get with the wider community and see where everybody's at and how we're doing.
You didn't need to kidnap anyone this year.
No.
We we got to spend enough time with all of our friends at Combo. Last year, David, she, and Sarenth got into such good conversations that David missed his flight. And so we got to kidnap the visiting shaman, and he came back to our house for part of the night until he got to catch an early flight the next morning. This year, we were able to make it through without holding anyone hostage. So that's a plus.
Yeah, it was good. It was very good to see everybody. So speaking of seeing everybody, without too much further ado, I'd like to introduce our wonderful guest, Drunertos Tarwoknos. I hope I'm saying that pronouncing that correctly. Oh, excellent. So Drunertos is a Mediterranean and Gaulish polytheist engaged in ongoing poetic myth-making work, running a Brittonic and Romano-British polytheist group and delving into the mysteries of the gods they worship and the paths they are exploring. And I really appreciate you taking so much time out of your morning. I work midnight, so when somebody comes up this early in the morning, I'm just like, kudos, because this is the time I'm going to bed. So by all means, please unmute yourself and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, guys. It's good to be here.
So, if you don't mind me asking, since I know that you know Snow and I don't know much about your path, so I'm coming at this fairly fresh. I mean, I did look at your website, I did check some things out, but I'm not a Brittonic polytheist. I'm a Norse heathen primarily. So I'm curious, what is it about Brittonic polytheism that really drew you? And Gaulish polytheism as well. Just let's just hit everything at once.
Um, so I think originally, so I came to polytheism probably first as a heathen. I think it was the most accessible and the most sort of widespread when I was first getting into it. Um, I spent a lot of time on Reddit and online, and slowly I started to see things from Selguirus, his mental and Bolgon, and that sort of started to keep popping up over and over and over again. And it was he used a lot of Lapontic runes and all this stuff, so it's quite sort of arcane for me to get into and to understand. But then it started to slowly get familiar, and then I joined Goal Chat, and then from there I joined the Brittonic group. Um, and just seeing just the wealth of gods, like over 300 Gaulish gods named, like sort of 50 plus in Roman Britain. I was just like, wow, like, there's just so much here that I had no idea about. And so started to delve into that, and it's just been really really interesting, really fulfilling.
Awesome. So that was going to be my like first question, all kind of wrapped in one, was how did you get started? It makes sense. I mean, Selig has that way with words. They have that power, that charisma. Um, what? So you're over in the Oceania, right? So what drew you to these specific gods, if you don't mind me asking? I get asked this as a Norse heathen, which always makes me giggle because, like, okay, but I'm curious, like, what drew you to the Brittonic since you're over in Oceania? Was there this feeling of, well, there are gods I can't reach out to, there are pathways that aren't mine to follow, or was it more of a I'm going towards something?
Yeah, I guess part of it was when I first came to polytheism on on Reddit and just sort of online and on these blogs, there was a lot of this, you should follow the gods of your ancestors sort of thing. And so originally that was my sort of entryway into Roman Britain because I'm of primarily British descent as a white Australian, as a lot of white Australians are. So that was something that drew me there originally. But just once you look into Roman Gaul, like Roman Britain and Roman Gaul, like so yes, you've got the British gods, but then you've got the Roman gods, then there were Syrian gods and Egyptian gods and German gods, like this whole like, you should worship the gods of, your ancestry. Like that's not really a thing, like it's polytheism. You kind of just, the gods are just there.
I I appreciate that answer as somebody that worships gods from a multitude of home cultures. Uh, Anubis has never had a problem that I'm
Yeah.
not of African descent, so uh, you should worship the gods of your ancestors. I kind of the people that I heard that from when I was starting off as a heathen, I always kind of sided like, what are you getting
Yeah.
at, guy? What's your
I mean, it's
purpose
also
here?
just like, I mean, you're never going to know who your ancestors 2,000 years ago worshipped anyway, or who they were, how they identified. So like, it's kind of bullshit anyway. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to make the comment that I think people sometimes underestimate the power of just feeling drawn to certain gods. You might not have like the specific reason why, but you feel that connection. And if you put in the energy and that connection holds up, then that's a worthwhile reason. Whether or not there's an ancestral connection, whether or not like there's other logical things that you can specifically pinpoint. I think the gods themselves sometimes draw people in without people realizing why.
in your own exploration of the gods, with that in mind, which ones did you reach out to first, and why? What ones were kind of like, ooh, I really want to know this god better.
I think getting into Gaul first, Kononos definitely was sort of the first god and is sort of the first for a really, really big chunk of the Gaulish population. Um, but then from there, Sirona really, I felt a really deep connection with her, and I feel like she's helped me through so much through sort of mental health issues and stuff. Like she's been there for a long time. And then in Britain, Nodens definitely really strong connection with Nodens, but with Nodens I feel it more seasonally. So here down in Hobart, for half the year it's really sunny and dry. And Nodens is a god of the clouds, of the mists, of the rain. So then when the rains come in that second half of the wet half of the year, then it really feels like, okay, yeah, he's here, he's present, and I can like really fully engage with him.
Is it almost like he has a time of year where he's very present and then where he's not, or is it he's always present, but there's just different ways of relating to him through the weather?
He definitely feels more present in winter, I think. I mean, maybe that's just a sort of psychological thing for me. Like, I don't think he's actually physically or, metaphysically less present, but he feels less present in the summer.
That makes sense. With some of these gods, I recognize the names of, like Noten, Sirona. They sound familiar, but I don't know them. Can you dig a little bit into who they
Yeah,
are?
so Nodens uh, was worshipped in Lydney, which is basically near Swansea in Wales, like this bottom corner, and in one location in the north west of Britain. But his name is cognate with the Welsh Lud or Nud and the Irish Nuada. So a lot of our understanding of him comes from sort of later Welsh and Irish texts. And Sirona, her name means great star or starry goddess. She's worshipped along with Apollo Granus on a really big section of Gaul into Germania and a couple places east as well. She was actually quite a popular goddess. And I mean, her partner, Apollo Granus, one of the Roman emperors, he was really sick. He made the trek specifically to Granus's temple to try and get healing. So, popular enough that a Roman emperor, was aware of them.
Gotcha. Did you have something streaking fate? Oh, okay.
No, I was just popping around on one of your sites, Albion and Beyond, and looking at how much information you have on the different gods. I really love how it's laid out. It is
Thank you.
very, very beautiful and easy to navigate, and I definitely appreciate that.
So with these gods, the question that came to mind as I was like looking at your Albion and Beyond website was like, uh, first off, what is it? And second off, why Albion rather than say Britannia or Anglo-Saxon? I mean, obviously there's time period stuff there, right?
Yeah, part of it, I think I just like the sound of Albion. I think it's cool. Um, but
Fair.
there was sort of a wariness with using like Britannia because it relates to the British Empire. Rule Britannia is this imperial song.
Mm,
So I'm not trying to yeah, so trying to sort of divorce it from that British imperialist because it is divorced from it. It's obviously not all that related. Um, and the website was primarily because when I came into the community 5, 6 years ago, most of the sort of Brittonic or Brythonic stuff was very Welsh focused, like it's sort of that later period pulling from sources like the Mabinogion, but there was very little on Rome and Britain. But we have so much, and um, thanks to the work of British historians and archaeologists, we have really easily accessible information on these gods, like on Gaul and German. Sometimes the sources are in French or in German or some other languages that a lot of us don't speak. But for the British gods, it's all in English, so it's really accessible. And I thought, okay, I mean, this is all here, and it's accessible for anyone, at least with sort of a university education and access to like university libraries. So I thought I want to make this more accessible for others so that they can see that there is so much here, more than just the Welsh stuff, which is not to disparage any of the Welsh stuff, but it's like there's a lot here.
Hmm. So I guess the other thing that, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about Brittonic polytheism, Gaulish polytheism, and all that, one of the things that comes out quite a bit lately is almost this concern that we're over focusing on the gods as polytheists. So, is there also a focus on ancestors and spirits of different kinds in your practice? And if so, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
There definitely is a focus on ancestors for me. I I wouldn't say I necessarily focus on my, I suppose, biological ancestors. I'm more of a focus on sort of the ancestors
Hmm.
of my practice or my tradition. So there might be certain historical figures that I deify to a certain extent or treat as ancestors that I ask to help guide me through my practice. But I would say that I probably am a lot more God focused. Um, uh, I don't know, it might be my Christian upbringing. It just feels, it feels appropriate to, to focus on them.
Absolutely. No judgment. I come from a very God-focused background myself, both in terms of my former Catholicism and in terms of my current heathenry. It's just that a lot of spirits have been kind of raising their heads, going, "Hey, hey, we're here too, you fucker." Uh, for instance, for me, Alfar and trolls, for instance, have very much come out of the woodwork these last couple of years. And I would say that it's a broader trend I'm seeing between our various communities that there's more attention being paid to these various spirits. And I wonder if you're encountering something similar where people are like, well, I have a really hard time wanting to go interact with my local land spirits because of what happened here with colonialism. And it's like that's nice, but they're still there. You still have to share the space with them.
I think for me, I mean, one of the spirits that I do interact with regularly is sort of my house spirit, Lars Familiaris, whatever you want to
Oh yeah.
call it. And I mean, and that's, I think, something that anyone can get started with, even if you're living on sort of colonized land like I am, I mean, we all live in houses. You may as well sort of interact with the spirit that dwells in the house as well. And I think that's a good sort of easy, relatively non-problematic way to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there particular ways that you folks practice with your house spirit that might be different from what your average heathen might be used to? Like, for instance, we offer things like household items, we offer uh, cups of coffee or water, that kind of thing,
Uh,
um, as a way of building
I
relationship.
think it's really quite similar, and I think this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is that really sort of Gaulish and Brittonic and all this sort of continental Celtic stuff, because so many of us started as heathens or were very closely tied to heathen communities. uh, like the actual practice is really not any different to a heathen practice. Like we might have different gods, we might call things different names, but it's really basically exactly the same.
Gotcha. Are there particular I guess that you used the word Larry's
Lares familiaris.
sorry, I'm gonna butcher the thank you, Larry's familiaris. So, we might call them Husvitir here. Um, but is it mostly just kind of like we're kind of carrying on very similar
Yeah.
relationships, but just in very the
Yeah.
names are different.
Yeah, I mean, and I used Lares familiaris there because we don't have attested names in Gaulish or Brittonic for a house spirit. Um, um,
Gotcha.
some people reconstruct it. Tagatus is one, which just means spirit sort of the house or at the house. But we don't really have that much. The Gauls and the Britons didn't write much pre sort of Roman period, and even then they didn't really write much about anything. So
I
yeah,
understand this frustration. Like, why couldn't you just write a
I
song?
know,
Damn
yeah.
it! I want to know what that Varthloker is. Give me the fucking lyrics. Oh, sorry, Emily. Did you have something?
I was just gonna say that the spirits will give you the lyrics if you ask them. But be careful what you ask because you might get the answer. It just might not be in written form.
This is very true. This is very true.
I'm basically saying stay in your body for this interview. Beware of what you ask, because these are not things we need answered at the moment.
This is true. This is true. Um, oh, I actually did have a question leading off of this. On the website, in the About Us section, it says Brittonic polytheism is the worship of Brittonic gods in a Brittonic way, informed by historical study. It implies the adherence to several Brittonic values and customs and the acknowledgement of holidays and mythic cycles. Can you dig into what a Brittonic way particularly is?
That's a tough one because I wrote that probably 3, maybe 4 years ago, and since then, I think there was a stronger, at least for me, there was a stronger um, specific identity to what it meant to be a Brittonic polytheist. But I mean, it's sort of just Brittonic polytheist, Gaulish polytheist. It's sort of all on a spectrum, and then how it intersects with religion within the Roman Empire. And then at this point, it's sort of like, okay, um, a Brittonic god is any god that a Brittonic polytheist worships, or a Brittonic value is anything that a Brittonic polytheist sort of identifies with. Like it's sort of, yeah, I don't think I am in the position to say what those values or specific practices are.
That's fair. I I could definitely understand wanting to strike out on your own and develop your own identity and then realizing, well, this was a really cool
Yeah.
idea. The only problem is that we're all people.
I think a lot of us who start out with as like polytheists start in, especially if we start in a specific like cultural or pantheon box, we have ideas that this is the box that we are going to stay in, and this is our road. And then as we travel it, we realize, I think like a lot of our ancestors probably did, that it's about what works and it's about what's around us. And so we might bring in some gods that might not usually be in that quote unquote box, but it's in our box because that's who we're interacting with. Um, we like, or spirit wise or whatnot. Um, I find it really interesting to see how people's practices change and develop. Because I also would consider myself very deity centric, despite my practices with a lot of other spirits at this point. Um, because I started out very deity centric, and I still think I involve the gods in my practice a lot more than maybe the average person would. And that's not good or it's not bad. it's just how it is. Some people don't work with the gods at all, and it's all ancestors. Some people, it's all land spirits. Some people have like a different ratio. They'll honor the gods, but they're not a major part of their practice. And so it's very interesting for me to see how people's practices change and diversify, especially being a polytheist in such a globally connected world, I think.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. I guess one of the sort of, I guess, projects of Reconstructionism or post-Reconstructionism is to view the world as a sort of an ancient polytheist would. But an ancient polytheist, they might have known about the city near them or the next village over and the gods worshipped there. But then we know about the gods from 2,000, 3,000 years ago from all over the world, and then all the gods worshipped now. And it's like, how would, if you took one of these polytheists and sort of put them here today, how would they decide which gods they want to worship, or how would their religion change? How would their practice change? And I just have no idea. But it's something that I think about a lot.
Yeah, that is a fascinating idea. If they were like present today, how would they react with in the environments that we're in and with the knowledge available to us? I find it fascinating, but I am very grateful that we have the ability to connect and like find out across ways. Like for me, I always say that my worldview starts from Cometicism, which is not obvious at all because I'm much more obvious with my heathen stuff. But my first worldview is the Kemetic lens, and then there's the heathen lens, and then there's multiple other lenses that get put on there. But it is interesting, I think, as a present day polytheist to see what works for you and finding other people who want to walk maybe similar paths with like similar gods, or like the same gods. How do you integrate historical knowledge into, or do you into your practice?
I think so. For the historical knowledge, I guess knowledge about the gods is the biggest thing that I integrate first off. But often that historical knowledge is quite a bare bones. It's, we know sort of what their name means. We know that maybe they were interpreted as Apollo, so you've got some extra threads to pull from there. They were worshipped with this other god, so there's sort of a connection that you can pull from there. And maybe you know that they were worshipped by a shipping guild or a smithing guild, so there's sort of extra extrapolations you can get there, but it's really quite bare bones. And then from there, it's really just building a relationship like you would, with a person. Really, it's just you just need to get to know them. So it quickly gets to the point where historical information sort of just runs out, and it's really just practice.
I am a little curious. Sarah, do you have anything to interject? I was going to ask about like the ecstatic parts of your practice. Was that something that you started as like early on having a dimension of your practice that involved ecstatic stuff, or is that something that you've come into
Definitely
later?
something I've come into later. At the start, it was very like, yeah, I'm a reconstructionist. I'm going to reconstruct all of this from scratch, and it's going to be great. And but very quickly, I was like, okay, I've got nothing left to reconstruct. That's it. So I need to, I want to know more about the gods, and I want to understand more. And that sort of ecstatic practice was one way to get there. Like it's a tool to understand the gods better. So that's something that definitely came later.
if you don't mind me asking, are there any ecstatic practices that are particular to Brittonic or Gaulish polytheism, like as opposed to say Sather or Udaceta, going under the cloak, working with spirits to do prophesy work like with Spa, anything? Are they their cognates or are they kind of their own independent practices, that kind
I,
of thing?
for me, they're very much uh, directly inspired or borrowed from existing living traditions. I mean, we just don't. I'm sure that there was plenty of cool stuff that the Gauls and the Britons did. I mean, one example that Miranda Aldhouse Green talks about are these heads sort of carved into stone in Britain that she supposes were used for prophecy and for communication with either the divine or the ancestors. So, there's something there, but we don't have a manual written down. We don't, I mean, and it's mostly sort of scholarly conjecture, so we don't. So beyond that, I really do. It's just borrowing and learning from living continuous traditions.
That's cool. Um, I guess the question that I have, because the instant that you said like these heads carved into stone, I immediately thought of like pulse of the head and things like that. Mimir comes to mind with his head being able to give information and wisdom. Is that something? Is there
Yeah,
something there that you've
yeah,
experienced,
definitely.
or is okay?
I mean, there's even a Welsh story. I think his name Brenos, I think. He was a king in the Mabinogion. He had his head cut off, and they carried it around with them, and the head would tell them things. So it's very much like, yeah, the head of Ymir. Like it's definitely there, and I can see where the scholars are talking about when they say there must be something there with all these heads that we find. And sometimes they do find real human skulls, buried under doorways and things like that. So there's definitely something there.
Oh, that's neat. Okay, so side tangent. It real that makes me think of stuff that Lakuto talks about in the tradition of household
Yeah.
spirits, where the spirit that's buried under your threshold or buried in the walls is something that either is one of the head spirits, or it's in this case literally, um, or it's something that is to protect the household with. Is there a similar thing in some of the lore that you've been able to find, or some of the folklore?
Um, I haven't seen it in any of the folklore, but I do feel like it's either um the papers that I'm thinking of, they were referring to the skulls of human children, sort of, yeah, either being put into wells or being put under doorways or structures. And I think that it's either, they just wanted their child close to them, or they're deifying them, venerating them in some way. Yeah.
Both
Yeah.
make total sense to me. Yeah, very cool. So I guess this comes to my next question. The House of Secrets. I love the image of is that a triple
Yeah.
headed crane
So
that I'm seeing?
the bull, the three-horned bull is Tarwos Triggeranus, which means uh, the bull with three cranes. But the word for crane is also very similar to the word for horn. Um,
Hmm.
and so we have him depicted on the Pillar of the Boatman, and there's one other pillar. Um, it was either in Trier or Paris. Found under Notre Dame, I think one of them was. Um, and and there's depicted three cranes on top of him in these pillars. There's a lot of
Okay.
theories about it, but for me, the cranes upon his death, upon his sacrifice, they carry three parts of his souls to the three worlds. So that's why the cranes have a golden head, a blue head, and a red head. The golden head being Albios, or the heavens, the blue head being Bitus, which is this world, and the red head being Dubnus, the other world, the deep.
Gotcha. Oh, see, now I'm like, ooh, neat. Oh, this is juicy. I like this a lot. Just between the Albion and Beyond and the House of Secrets, like a lot of the stuff is tickling a similar fancies to my heathen work. Um, Especially since our practices are so very similar. Um, in Brittonic Gaulish polytheism, how are your worlds arranged? Or is there an official way, or is it kind of a this is what we've uncovered, this is what we feel, this is what we
So
experience?
the scholarship and sort of just the community holds that it's a tripartite world with Albius, the heavens, Bitus, which is this world, and Dubnus, which is the deep, the underworld. But
Mhm.
then from the Larzak curse tablet, we have a place called Antumnus or Andumnus. And so the an at the start of the word, so the tumnus or dumbness is the same as dubness, which is the deep, but the an can either be I think it was an intensifier or uh, a negation, like the not deep or the not world, or the
Oh,
unworld. So and then we have the Welsh. I never know how to pronounce it, but the Anwin, it's probably, I think it's Anfrin or something, which is cognate with Andumnus. And so whether that is a separate world to the four worlds, whether it's just Dubnus by a different name, or whether it's sort of this realm that somehow sort of streaks between all three worlds and sort of connects the three worlds. Community is sort of split on that, and there's no really like scholars definitely can't say one way or the other. So,
gotcha. Well, if you don't mind me picking on you a little bit, what is your experience of this? Because what it sounds like to me, just from the sheer description, is kind of similar to there's Helheim and then there's uh oh, Cars, I'm gonna completely botch it. The Nistrand, right? So there's like this deeper part of Helheim, or a part that's attached, if you will. Um, do you have a similar view? Do you have a different view, or is yours kind of shifting around, or kind of depends on what
um,
context?
it probably depends on what day you ask me or what time of day, but uh, generally I see Antumnus as, yeah, as this sort of side world which
Mhm.
you can sort of step through to sort of reach and contact the other worlds. It's sort of a, yeah, it's like a highway between them. Yeah.
That makes sense. That
And
tracks.
I've variously thought that, it's sort of it's another way to express the world tree, or maybe it's separate from the world tree. But yeah, again, depends what day you ask me.
I appreciate that, especially one of the features in our ancestor ritual that I helped with Emily on was that um, she actually made a space kind of between so that people with different underworlds or different ancestors could actually come and meet and not have to be like, well, this is Helheim. I guess my Gaulish ancestors are out. I guess my Kemetic ancestors aren't going to be welcome here. Um, the idea of there being that kind of road between makes a lot of sense to me. But I also understand, like, ask me on a
Yeah.
different day and I might
Yeah.
have a different answer for you.
Yeah.
Mysticism, it's weird like that.
So, how did you get into having an ecstatic part of your practice? And what does that look like for you? If you can talk to that.
Um, so how I got into it, I've done a bit of religious studies at university, and I just do a lot of sort of religious studies personally on my own, and uh, that's where I became more familiar with it. Though also there was also a lot of Hellenic polytheists, especially Dionysus worshippers, talking about ecstatic practice, or Kybele worshippers talking about ecstatic practice, and I was like, okay, these are cool historic things. Let's dig into them more. For me, my ecstatic practice, uh, it's mainly a lot of sort of trying to get into that ecstatic state through chanting and through prayer and through active meditation. So often, if there's this sort of idea that's in my head that I can't quite get out, I can't quite grasp, I will go to the ocean, I'll go swim, um, and just get dunked by the waves over and over again. And it seems to sort of pull it out somehow. I don't know if it's a stress response or something, but it does something to make it more present and sort of puts it onto my tongue. And I mostly use that sort of presence, that state of mind for writing myths and stories, trying to capture, I guess, that essence and to hold on to it for later.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what is Tegos Runos? Because I hear Runos, and I'm like, oh,
That
runes,
just
neat.
means
Or is it more like,
well, I mean, it just means house of secret. So yeah, runos in Gaulish means sort of secret or arcane. It's related to the Germanic word for rune. So yeah, it's all connected, you know.
I mean, I'm unapologetically heathen. Like I see we got those words together. What does this mean? We must dig into this. Um, so what in your view is kind of the root of a magico-religious tradition, such as the Gallo-Brittonic one that you have here?
I think it's this sort of striving for connection, for gnosis, for something deeper. Um, and like yeah, we can worship the gods and we can do it in quite a, I suppose, mundane way, and not in a bad thing, but it's like uh, you connect to them and you feel good. But then there's times when you want more, like there's a little sort of fire sort of in your heart that just wants more fuel. So I think it's that striving, that seeking for more.
If you don't mind me asking, see that thirst, that quest, that there's got to be more to this. That definitely understand as an Odinson. Uh, I also wonder. So in heathenry, we have things like we have practices you can dig into, like you can do rune work, you can do Sather, you can do all of these ecstatic practices, like you mentioned with making your prayers and having gnosis experience with your gods. Um, as you are going through the process of getting hit by those waves, when you say deeper, I find it's very interesting. A lot of people have an interesting idea of what that means. What does going deeper into practice mean to you?
I think it's trying to understand the nature of the gods and therefore reality even more. It's like, okay, I suppose the general polytheist thing is, there are these gods and they're independent entities, but there's so much more to that. Like, I mean, what does it mean for a god to be an independent entity? But then you've also got so much syncretism and interpretatio in the past, and these gods that share so much sort of there's so much about them that they're similar, but then so much that's different. And everyone, you could have 10 people pray to the same god and come back and compare notes, and it's sort of like you've been talking to 10 different gods, and it's like, what's going on there? Like, are they talking to 10 different aspects of the same god? Is it actually just 10 different gods using the same name? Is it that's trying to really get into that with the knowledge that I'm never going to have concrete answers, and my answer is going to be different to everyone else's. But I just find that really, really fascinating to think about.
I think it says something that even with the background of academia as kind of, I honestly think, and you can confirm or deny this, Emily, as far as the comedics go, that a lot of us work with the academic sources as kind of a backbone or a map. And then it's like some of us will be okay with just keeping to the map, but then there's some of us who are like, neat, I want to see what the territory looks like. And that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you can have such meaningful relationships with the gods, just I guess with that baseline information, like I have for years, and so many people do, and like there's absolutely nothing, like it's a perfectly good practice, but I can't help but want to know more. Like I just, yeah.
Um, everyone, everyone's practice is obviously different, and some people have an ecstatic aspect, and some people don't. Just like some people are more deity centric, while some people might be more like land spirit centric. Um, I am curious if you see yourself as filling a certain role or roles within the community and what those might be. Like particularly I'm looking at you've written a lot of myths through your ecstatic experiences. So I would see you as like a myth maker and storyteller as one of your like possible many roles. But I was curious like how you view yourself and yourself within your community.
Yeah, the myth making and ecstatic stuff is definitely something I want to lean more into and something I've been leaning more into. But when I first came to the community, um, there was a need for access for academic sources, and I had and have multiple sort of university library access. So it's really easy for me to get sort of these academic papers and books. I've also spent far too much time at university doing research and learning how to do research. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got these skills and this access. If I can help to create the baseline knowledge and information for people so that people can take this and then go on and do what they want with it, that's very much what something that I see myself doing. And I also just had a lot more free time than so many people in my community. A lot of people have kids and they've got busy full-time work. And so I just had so much free time. I was like, okay, well, I just feel like it'd be a complete waste for me to not do this.
That's fair. Uh, it's funny how you can doggedly pursue a piece of research, and then when you get to the end of it, it's like, all right, well, now I got to do something with this. Ah, shit. Where does this go now?
Yeah.
Have you found yourself having more times like that? The further you dig into your own myth making, it's like, for context, in my own myth making, I will often look to the sagas and sources and go, okay, this is what we know. This is what I'm being told, and this is where I see bridges. But sometimes it's so far off the map that I'm just being given stuff and I'm writing it down.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of inspiration. I think I imagine a lot of it is subconscious inspiration. Uh, I've read all the Welsh stuff. I've read a lot of the Roman and Greek stuff. I've read Zoroastrian things, Hindu things, Buddhist things. I mean, it's all swirling in my head, whether I know it or not, and definitely um, inspiring me. Um, but it's sort of I don't see the myths as literal really in any sense. So I use them as tools to express understanding of the gods and express the natures of the gods. So the story really doesn't matter in some ways. It's sort of just a vehicle through which to express sort of the identity of the gods.
It matters more that you're telling the story
Yeah,
than the
yeah.
content in the end. That tracks. Do you find with myths and legends that you know pretty well that sometimes things come out as you're telling a story that you didn't mean to put in there, but maybe for the audience you're telling it to, there's something that comes forward in it.
I think, yeah, I suppose sometimes I write my myths in a way also that they can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Um, in some ways, you could interpret my myths as saying that sort of Serona is the arch, that she's the absolute fundamental creator. But in other ways, uh, yeah, you could interpret it in a lot of different ways. And that's a feature, not a bug, I think.
Absolutely. So that actually kind of brings my mind to something else as we're sitting here and we're talking about expression and all that. What makes a group magico-religious versus being just straightforwardly religious? Like, is there actually such a thing? Is there a separation there for you?
I think the it's that I guess that seeking for the arcane, for the secret, for that's the difference for me. And it, some people, I guess it just depends on how you define magic and religious, because oftentimes they're the same thing or they're different things, and it sort of, I think partly also just like the sound of magico-religious. But yeah, it's for me, it's a um, in some ways, I view magic as a little bit more self-serving, and it's sort of self-serving for me to seek out these secrets because the gods don't need me to do it. It's just something that I want to do because I've got this desire to do it, which doesn't make it like it's not like bad. It's just, but it's self-serving. Like there's no reason for me to do it.
That tracks. I definitely can I can understand that. It was funny because I was the reason I bring this question up, besides the House of Secrets being named the way it is, uh, it's also something that I find immense delight in listening to religious studies folks try to grapple with. Because I'm sitting here giggling as they're trying to define what the difference is between magic and religion. And like I was listening to the Great Courses series on religion, which was a big historic overview kind of a thing. I'm like, well, so magic is this, but it's also this. It's it's the ability to like move forces and talk with spirits, but it's also kind of cached within this larger spiritual worldview. But it's also not just straight up spiritual. It was really funny listening to them like go back and forth trying to dissect what the hell they're talking about. Go ahead, Emily. It's on you.
I was just going to add that I do think having self-serving aspects within our practices helps make them more
Mm.
maintainable, for lack of better wording. Um, again, from, well, Sarenth is an Odinson, and so the quest for knowledge is always there. But that quest for knowledge comes out in blog posts and classes that teach other people as well. Just like your myth making provides vehicles for other people to come closer to those gods, to encounter those gods in a closer way that they might not be able to, or might not be able to as easily without having those myths to facilitate that connection. But yeah, I do think that sometimes, because of possibly other historical things, we downplay the importance of religion needing self-serving points to make it functionable, and to be able to maintain it in a healthy and useful way that is healthy for us as well as for our communities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I suppose I'm of the view that the gods don't need me to worship them. They don't need me to give them offerings. Like they're sort of just fine and dandy on their own. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of, from my view, sort of all religion, I guess, is self-serving because the gods don't need any of this. So we're really doing it for ourselves and for our community. And I think that's totally, it's reasonable. I mean, we eat for ourselves, we shower for ourselves, we sleep for ourselves. Why wouldn't we do religion for ourselves as well?
I kind of like that. The notion that we can take care of our needs while also taking care of these relationships. I'm got to chew on that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think it just goes back to reciprocity and self-preservation. Because we feed ourselves in this search, in these forms of worship, in these forms of exploration. It's we don't have to have others feed us in those ways necessarily, if that makes sense. But we're also able to help other people in our communities feed themselves through what we produce. And like with every community, different community members produce different things. I'm thinking specifically of certain like cooks and bakers in communities and delicious food at certain events that I very, very much appreciate. People that fill those roles, oh yeah. Like there's so many different levels, and when people do things that bring themselves joy, it also adds that to the community in multiple ways. Because ecstatic interaction is something that I really enjoy. I really appreciate hearing how other people use that and experience that and work with that. But I know there's so many different roles that people fulfill. And I am very grateful because I am not shaped to fill most of those roles.
I guess that's an interesting question that as we kind of develop in our different pathways, are there hopes for the future that you have for the House of Secrets, for Albion and beyond, for the groups that you're involved in? Are there things that you'd like to see them go towards? Are there things um that you're seeing now that you're hopeful for the future?
I think one of my biggest hopes for Albion and Beyond in the future is that someone else takes it off my hand and actually takes it and does something else with it. It was like it was a passion project for me for so long, and it's gotten to the point where I feel like my focus is just elsewhere. But I don't want it to be like an individual solo project that was sort of just like me. I want it to be a community thing, so I want to pass it on. So just trying to get people, to buy into doing that. But the community is just it's small, you know. So I guess the biggest hope, I guess, is that it just grows more and more so that it can take on a life of its own. Because I think at the moment, individuals can be very impactful, which is a really interesting and gratifying thing as an individual, but you also want to get to the point where individuals aren't that impactful, and it's communities and groups that are impactful rather than individuals.
That tracks. I definitely feel very similar about heathenry. Uh, I would love for us to get all of us to get to the point where it's like, okay, we're not hinging on this one, two, three people sticking around for this thing to keep on
Yeah.
trucking. I get that.
Yeah.
But
No, no,
also,
you go, you go, you go.
oh, go ahead, please. I also think that there is something really raw and beautiful about where our communities are right now, in that we are so open to experience, and we're so open to, and I say this with no small amount of knowledge, that I'm saying this with perhaps more optimism than I usually show with regards to our various communities. But it really, I think, says something that so many of us are open to exploring these experiences, that we haven't ossified into there is exactly one way to do this, and it's this person's teaching method, or this person's perspective of the three worlds, for instance.
Yeah, I definitely it's really interesting. Um, and honestly, just I'm excited to live the next, hopefully say 70 years of my life to just see how it all evolves and expands. And, I hope when I'm, 90 that I'm some crotchety old traditionalist old man. And then there's, these really hip new, I don't know, whatever generation they're going to be, Gen 7 or, Gen C or whatever they're going to be, that are doing these really cool, crazy things, like I'm, I'm excited for that possibility. And I just hope that it keeps growing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we got some. If you would like to transfer into the questions from the
Yeah,
audience
sure.
at this point, do you have anything else you want to go over, Emily? Okay. So from Brandon the Bull, this is a bit of a palate cleanser and a bit of a funny one. Steel cage match, no rules. Donut versus bagel.
I think bagel definitely wins. I mean, donuts are so soft and squishy. I think a bagel 100% wins.
Okay. Well, then the follow-up question being, which one are you picking up to
Uh,
eat?
phew. It depends if there's toppings on the bagel, but at the moment, I think donut.
Fair. So we have
I really
sorry.
appreciate how literal you were with the cage match aspect of like the strength of the bagel versus like the softness of the donut, because I had not thought that perspective, but that makes a lot of sense. Continue on, Sarah.
Oh, bro. Oh, guys, give me a second. From from Dreckflesh, not exactly a question, but they would love to hear about Zul'Z and Interpretatio. If you have anything that you could go over for
Yeah,
that.
so I think the interpretation of Zul'Z as Minerva is really interesting because in actually the majority of her inscriptions, it's solely just Zul'Z on the inscription. But then there are two or three inscriptions where it says Zul'Z Minerva, where Minerva is second. But in most cases, it's the Roman name that comes first when it's in Britain and in Gaul. So it's quite an interesting thing. So, when the Roman name comes first, it's like, okay, well, are they seeing, this god as an aspect of the Roman god, or but when it's the British name that comes before the Roman name, it's like, well, okay, what are they implying there? But I think it's just that she was such a popular and well-loved god, and I guess that had such a distinct identity that she could just be Zul'Z, whereas maybe the other gods were. In a lot of cases, the other gods we've got one or two inscriptions, whereas there's sort of 10 or 12 inscriptions for Zul'Z. So I think yeah, she's just very popular, I guess.
Gotcha. And the other question that they had was the tension between making your practice local focus versus universal.
That's something I struggle with, I think. In the last few years, like there's been more talk in the community and the sort of wider polytheist community about sort of localizing your practice. I've never understood fully what really people were meaning by that. Because it's not, I haven't seen it explained super well, I guess. And I think because I am so deity focused, my practice is just more universal. You know, I mean, I'm worshiping gods from Britain and Gaul and from Galatia and from Rome while I'm living down on the other side of the earth. So it's kind of I can't help but make it universal, I guess. You know, I'm worshiping gods that were worshipped over so many different countries and time zones. Yeah, I think yeah, it's hard not to be universal.
You know, yeah, I get
I
that, but oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was wondering if your holiday schedule, if the timing of the holiday shifts based on your seasons, or if it's more like based on calendar dates for when you celebrate things, if that makes sense.
I might shock everyone here, but say that I don't really celebrate any of the holidays. I think I've never been one to
Yes.
really celebrate, you know, New Year's or Christmas or my birthday. I only do it because people around me are doing it, and because currently I don't practice with anyone, so I don't have a group to celebrate holidays with. So I generally don't. But in the times that I have, I do it based on sort of local climactic conditions. So, you know, the start of summer, I do it not on the calendar. Whereas in Australia, we say, you know, it was just the 1st of March. So we say that's the start of autumn. But the astronomical start doesn't
Mhm.
start for another, what, 2, 3 weeks until the equinox. So when I'm celebrating holidays like that, I do put it on the sort of um, climatological dates and stuff.
That's very fair. I'm have like a couple holidays that I really enjoy celebrating. Um, but overall, I tend to celebrate holidays if people around me are celebrating them. And if not, it is a lot easier for me to just forget about it or not think about it. So yeah, I know some people are very holiday focused. That has not been a super significant part of my practice outside of community participation and a very few select holidays. So I definitely understand that being. But I was curious because I do know being in Australia with that flip of when different seasons occur. A lot of people are curious
Yeah,
about that.
generally, yeah, we do sort of, I suppose, move them forward by 6 months. And it is sad seeing, you know, all my American and Canadian friends, you know, celebrating things, and it's like, oh, I want to celebrate the start of spring with you, but it's actually the start of autumn, so it's kind of a, you know, I do feel a bit left out sometimes, but yeah, that's the nature of the beast.
I think it's also something that you talked about, I think at the top of the show, where you only feel Noten's presence in
Yeah.
the wintertime. That to me to me that's utterly localized practice because I mean your winter is definitely not
Yeah.
ours.
Yeah, I suppose it is. And I think I struggle feeling a connection to Tyrannos, for example, the Thunderer, because we basically don't get thunderstorms here in Hobart. I've been here for 8, 9 years. I think we've had 5 thunderstorms. So whereas, you know, there's
Oh
people like
wow.
and where I grew up was in the subtropics. We used to have thunderstorms all the time. So living there, it would have been very easy to feel connected to him. But here, it's sort of like, well, we don't really get thunderstorms, so There's not much thundering going on here.
It also, to me, like your climactic difference is buck wild for me to think about because I've lived in Michigan all my life. It's temperate, so we get 4 solid seasons usually, in addition to our construction season. So um, it's interesting hearing like there's this like, sharp dichotomy, and it kind of reminds me of how the heathen year was in Scandinavia because it'd be like there's Vetter and there's Sumar. That's it. It's winter or it's either hot or it's fucking cold. Um, and your sharp division, although it's not exactly the same because climactic difference is putting it mildly. Uh, but it's interesting how close and yet far that divide between the year
Yeah.
is.
I mean, and even our wintry time, we're still above freezing. We don't get snow, so it's not even like cold by your standards in the least. We get a tiny bit of sprinkle of snow on the mountain, but we don't get it down here. So it's it's more similar to a
Gotcha.
Mediterranean climate, and it is trending towards a more Mediterranean climate where we're having less and less rain in summer and more in the other parts of the year.
Hmm. Do you find, or are you finding as you're developing your mythopoetic cycles and things like that, that some of your myths are becoming more, lacking a better term, current or saying something about the near future to you or that kind of thing? I know that with some of my mythopoetic stuff that comes up, sometimes it's a spirit directly talking to somebody. Like for some of the prayers I've written lately, um, like I basically this one spirit, for instance, Nettle, like I've got your back. If you plant me, I will protect you, kind of a thing. Whereas some of the gods are kind of like, yeah, yeah, you're going through the shit. And like your ancestors, some of you will ride this out and some of you will not, but just keep heart. Are you getting things like that in your mythopoetic, or is it kind of pulled back and kind of larger
I think
scale?
it's largely pulled back, but um, there is a lot of the myth, I guess, is about doing what needs to be done, and um, with the world and climate change and everything, like there's just sort of, I suppose it does speak to that in a way that like there's just stuff that needs to be done, even if you don't want to do it. We kind of need to do it, or things are going to be really bad. So just sort of, pull your bootstraps up and do it.
That tracks. Um, Emily, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay.
No.
I just saw you unmuted, so I just wanted to make sure. Um, so as we're coming to about an hour and a half almost here, is there anything that you want to make sure that our audience knows in terms of where can we find you, plug your pluggables, that kind of thing?
I'm just sort of Drunertos everywhere. I think if you just Google that, all my websites and social medias pop up. Um, check out Tudor Galatian if you're interested in Gaulish stuff. It's a really good, solid, very friendly community, and we're always looking for more people to get involved. So if people are interested, definitely please do come in and say hi.
Awesome. Well, with that, uh, Emily, plug your pluggables.
Um, my website that I very, very occasionally write on, streakingfate.wordpress.com. There.
So, with our lovely friend Snow, you can find. I'm gonna plug their stuff since they're not here. You could find Linktree/Snow the Goth. You can get to all of their socials and all of their everything there. For myself, you can find me at sarnth.wordpress.com if you wish to commission me for a rune reading or for writing a prayer or topic. You can find me at patreon.com/sarnthodinson. If you want to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/aroundgrandfatherfire. You do not have to be a member of the Patreon in order to be a member of the Discord. We highly encourage folks to join the Discord. come into the community, come around that sacred fire and share what you have to share and learn what you have to learn. And we really appreciate all of the support on the various social medias and various places you can find our podcast. So I want to thank you all very much for coming. And I want to thank you, Drunertos. This has been a fabulous discussion, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for
It was
coming.
really awesome to be here.
Awesome. So I hope you have a lovely day. I hope that all of our listeners have a lovely time. Thank you all for joining us once more around the sacred fire. And we will see you next time around the fire.